Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Greece's conservative party, New Democracy, leader Evangelos Marakis has admitted defeat to Alexis Tsipras' left-wing SYRIZA party in the nation's fifth election in 6 years. He conceded to SYRIZA as the lead of 35% was announced by the Interior Minister. New Democracy is trailing at 28%, with a third of the votes counted. This is likely to leave SYRIZA just short of an absolute majority, and the party would need partners. To discuss all of this, I'm joined by Aris George-Baldur Spourdalakis. He's a member of the SYRIZA Youth Party since 2007. He's a graduate student in physics at the University of Toronto. I'm also joined by Panitch. He's a Canada Research Chair in Comparative Political Economy and a Distinguished Research Professor of Political Science at York University in Toronto. He's the author of the UK Deutsche Book Prize winner, The Making of Global Capitalism, the Political Economy of American Empire. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Sharmini.
Hi, thank you.
Aris, let me start with you. What are the results that are unfolding that's deeper than what I said just now in the intro?
Well, I think that the results are a triumph for SYRIZA and mainly the leader, Alexis Tsipras. It's a vote of confidence towards the previous government of 7 months. And I think that it shows that the signing of the agreement, despite the negative effects that it may have and continue to have, hasn't affected SYRIZA's electoral poll in the last years.
And Leo, you've been watching the results unfolding. Your initial take on all of this?
Well, I should tell your viewer, Sharmini, that I'm here with Aris because he and his wife have continued a family tradition of having close friends and family around to watch election returns, which, given how many elections there are in Greece, means that there's a lot of family dinners of this kind. We've had food and drink with friends and have been watching the returns. And, you know, I must say, I think a very large abstention is indicative of the number of people who voted in the referendum, where the turnout was very high, over 70%, who have been disillusioned. And that's very significant. That said, of those who did vote, it is remarkable how many of them have voted for SYRIZA, and how few of them have voted for Popular Unity, LAI, who broke away from SYRIZA in calling what they had done capitulation rather than blackmail, which is what it really was, of course.
Here you're talking about the split off of the left platform of SYRIZA, now called the Popular Unity Party, which at this moment has not garnered enough votes to actually make it into parliament, which leaves SYRIZA without that critical voice in parliament.
Much more than that, I think it means that the position, which I think is an important one, that it's necessary to break with the Eurozone and, if possible, break the Eurozone, will no longer be articulated in the Greek parliament. Particularly in the Greek parliament, it won't be in the Greek media. Had they stayed in the party, I think it would have been much more visible, and that important debate could have continued, probing how far one could stay within the European Union and break with it. Current arrangement.
And Aris, so one of the things that has happened now is that with the left platform and Popular Unity somewhat out of the way, this has given way to some additional members in parliament for the third party that at this time looks like it's going to be Golden Dawn Party, and they have appeared to have garnered a few more seats. How do you think that will transpire in the parliament?
Well, I think that the reason that the Golden Dawn has gained a few more seats is that the political system has been by the recent events. SYRIZA was forced into signing an agreement which was contrary to their program. Therefore, this this does help voices which are inherently against the democratic process and so on. However, I think that the result does give SYRIZA at least a chance to prove that signing of the agreement doesn't mean the end of the program and the end of what they can do. And the fact that they will be able to form a government with their former partners, the independent Greek party, will at least give them this chance to try and prove themselves and prove that the agreement is not the beginning and end of Greek politics right now.
Aris, you're a member of the youth wing of SYRIZA, and this voter turnout being just about 55% is a clear message of the disillusionment of the youth itself. And I understand that there was much less mobilization and enthusiasm in this election. How are you receiving this, and how do you think the SYRIZA Youth will be moving forward?
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm a member of what's left of the SYRIZA Youth. The majority of the SYRIZA Youth left the party after the decision of the government to call election before the party congress, which was programmed to be held in September. So I think that despite the fact that SYRIZA won the election, it's clear that a lot of their members have been disillusioned. And I think there are two main points to this. The first point, which refers to the fact that the Popular Unity Party of the left platform of SYRIZA wasn't able to attract these voters. And this shows, I think, that the main problem and the main reason that this has happened was not the agreement per se, but had to do with the democratic process both within the party and outside of the party. The first point. And I think the second point has to do with how much the elections affect people's everyday lives. And I think that right now, what is viewed as the agreement is what is viewed as what is going to affect people's everyday lives in the future. And if that is not, if that be changed as a view, I think that we're going to see more and more people being disillusioned and abstaining from the popular vote, or even turning to more radical solutions, either to the left or to the right.
And Leo, what does this result mean in terms of the formation in Parliament? How is SYRIZA going to lead with what kind of a coalition?
Well, I don't think it changes anything. SYRIZA will be effectively the government. It's clear that they were re-elected along with Anel, but it's a SYRIZA government, effectively. I think that and I must say, in terms of the vote, if you look at the breakdown of the youngest category of voters, they overwhelmingly voted for SYRIZA, overwhelmingly so, according to the exit polls and the questions asked. That's significant, I think. In terms of what goes on inside SYRIZA now and inside the SYRIZA government, which I think is a very good question, it's very much my hope that having secured this vote, that SYRIZA will now probe the openings within the framework of this memorandum that was forced on them, insofar as they to stay within Europe and the Eurozone, but to probe the room for maneuver they have. And I think with the mandate they've received, they have every right to. Certainly begin with, given the wording of the memorandum, one of the key red lines of SYRIZA was to reintroduce basic labor rights in Greece, which the previous memorandum had taken away, and the legislation under it had taken away. It's very important, I think, that they go ahead with collective bargaining legislation, restoring the rights of work. I don't see why that's not possible. I think the Europeans would have to allow them to do it, because what they're attempting to do is simply establish what basic rights are in Northern Europe. In fact, not even as much as that. So I think there's room. That's not to say that they don't need to figure out a way, as I hope they will, to break with the logic of the Eurozone and neoliberal Europe. But I do think they have the basis now to begin and pushing. After all, they're the government. And these accountants, these imperial accountants that the institutions send in, may be sitting there, but they are not the government. And I think it's very important for us outside and for SYRIZA itself to bear that in mind.
And Leo, what does this mean in terms of the coalition they will still need in order to govern?
Well, this hasn't proved a difficulty whatsoever. I mean, you could see when our leader spoke just now on television, that he considered this totally in an alliance with SYRIZA. It's not that he did very well, and they will have a couple of ministries, but that's not significant at all. In fact, the most progressive legislation that the government was able to pass, they were able to pass with an L. The humanitarian legislation, which was introduced for the poorest immediately in February, without getting the approval, by the way, imperial accountants from the Troika, who were demanding that they be shown the legislation. And then the granting of citizenship rights to the children of immigrants, which was passed in March. And you have here a nationalist party that they've aligned with. They weren't able to block that. So no, I don't think that in substantive, progressive, even socialist terms, this really is very much of a drag.
And what about the left wing of, well, what does this do to the left, period?
Well, besides SYRIZA, there remains people who are on the left, including in the cabinet there will be. Not least the finance minister, you could and he will be pushing, no doubt, for a strategy that would allow them in all kinds of arenas to be doing progressive things, health and education, etc. And I hope to be probing, even within the arena of finance, as much as possible, to put through a number of substantive progressive policies.
And Aris, it appears that if Antasia and the Popular Unity Party had formed a coalition, or at least a united party, that they would have stood a better chance at entering the parliament. What do you make of that?
Well, I think in a sort of in a sense that may be true. However, I think that this also shows sort of the problem that the left in general has to unite for a common goal. And also, I think what it shows is that despite the fact that both the Popular Unity and the Antasia were vocalizing in favor of protecting the Ohi vote, the no vote of the referendum of the 5th of July, which won 62% of the popular vote, they were not able at all to capitalize on this. I think there are many factors, of course, that play an important role in this. But I think what the main problem, I think, was this: was that they were not able to convince the people that they had a plan, which is the most important. And also, I think that the anti-SYRIZA rhetoric was too harsh and was unfairly harsh, and I think this put a lot of people off in voting for more radical anti-EU solutions.
Aris Spourdalakis and Leo Panitch, thank you so much for joining me today.
So long, Sharmini.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining me on the Real News Network.